Welcome back to the Let It Fly show. Our guest, Mr. College Baseball, KP Omaha. Kyle Peterson joined us, of course, from ESPN. How are you doing? How are things going?
I'm good. It totally feels like baseball season right now. So it's really good timing on you guys' part. I think it was 11 below when I got in the car today, but I'm good, man. I mean, it's crazy, but the season starts 3 weeks from Friday, so we're almost there.
Yeah.
I want to kind of dive into college a bit, playing at Stanford and things like that. What's one of the most memorable things for you playing at Stanford?
Baseball-wise?
Yes, baseball-wise.
Not the party.
Not the
baseball.
Yeah. No.
I don't know about Stanford.
It's
fun, yeah.
It was a little disappointing, actually, from that standpoint. But,
Crazy.
playing here, I mean,
Wow.
and I didn't, you go to school and you think you know what you're walking into, but I didn't really know. And then we got here twice. We got here my freshman year and we got here junior year. We didn't win it. That's the part that will always bother you. Because we were good. Definitely the second time. We were definitely good enough to win it. But it was crazy. I mean, my freshman year, I had got beat in the state tournament at Rosenblatt a year before that. And you fast forward to the next year, and I'm pitching against Clemson trying to make sure that we don't get eliminated.
Wow.
Right.
And I wasn't very good the year before when we got beat. Westside beat us in state. And it was a little bit different lineup on the other side than Westside had. But it was just so, I don't know. You probably had stuff like this when you played, where you got no idea until it's done.
Wow, yep.
And when you're in the midst of it, you're like, oh, this is super cool. And, buddies that are coming up and all the people just from growing up here that can go to it. So that would definitely be it. And honestly, the place was, and I had no idea when I got there, like, Tiger lived 2 doors down my sophomore year.
That's crazy.
Reese Witherspoon was a freshman. These 2 guys came through the freshman dorm my first year, and they're like, hey, we started this thing called a search engine.
Oh, my gosh.
And if you find a website that isn't our search engine, we'll pay you $5. And I remember looking at my roommate. I'm like, what the hell are these guys? It was the 2 guys who started
Bunch of
That's crazy.
Deons
just right
and
there.
Caleb's.
Yeah, I mean, you think, all the baseball stuff's fun, and then you realize what you're surrounded by at that time. It's when everything was going nuts. It was a cool place.
Wow. I don't remember asking you this before, you talking about it. How often did you go down to Rosenblatt as a kid? Because I know, depending on where you lived in the city, from what I've met people, if you're like a South Omaha person, you were there all the time.
Yeah.
If you were out in Elkhorn or you're someplace else, you weren't. How often did you get down there?
Tons. I mean, my grandpa had tickets.
Oh, wow.
That then my dad kept, and now we've got. So every time I could go, I would go, but it was also in the middle of the season. And so it was usually, they do tournaments that time of year. And I think it was, I don't remember if it would have been during the Legion season at that point. But if I could get down there, especially when I was little, I mean, I was the kid, and I guess they do it a little bit now, but they used to line the buses up outside when everybody get off and walk in and everything else. And so when somebody got beat, I'd go wait because you were going to get something.
Right.
And whether it's a pair of shoes or a ball or a hat or whatever. So I was that kid every year. And then I remember when we got here my freshman year, my mom's like, you got to go look in your drawer and see what's in there. And I had a program from 1988 when Stanford won the whole thing. Oh, wow. That was signed by everybody. I mean, the guys that were my coaches, and I didn't remember that I had it. Mm-hmm. But no, if I could get there, and my parents were awesome about it. I mean, they would take me whenever I wanted to. But if I could get there, I was there.
That's awesome.
Wow. So I assume every athlete has dreams and aspirations and people who, make them want to go pursue a sport. Who was that for you? Like, who was your childhood heroes in baseball and things like that?
I love the Braves, and they sucked. It was before.
So where did the love come from?
Well, there was only 3 teams that were on TV.
That's right.
I mean, you remember these days. Yeah. It was the Braves were on TBS, the Mets were on WOR,
okay.
and the Cubs were on WGN, and that was it. Like if you wanted to watch somebody every day, you had one of those 3 teams, or you weren't. My dad liked the Milwaukee Braves. And so it was, he would always talk about Hank Aaron, and he had a program from 1957 that was signed by some of the Milwaukee Braves.
Hopefully you still got that somewhere.
I don't know. He might have pawned it too for all I know. Maybe it's Saul's. But so it kind of came from that, and then we could sit and watch games at night. And he played at Midland down in Fremont for a few years, and so he coached me kind of all the time growing up. But I don't know what it was. There was something about. I mean, I love playing golf, but baseball was just the one that I was more drawn to, and I guess I can't tell you exactly why, but watching them, and it really was. I mean, it's when the Braves stunk, and then finally when I got into high school is when they started getting decent and got all the crew that they had for a 10-year run. But Yeah, and my mom was always really supportive too. I mean, she would go outside and throw
Play catch?
wiffle balls and all that.
Oh,
stuff.
okay, okay. Yeah.
Kyle Peterson joining us on Let It Fly show. I always tell younger people that there was something romantic about baseball because when I was living back east, you could literally just scan the radio, and I got the Orioles, I got the Mets, I got the Yankees, everybody down, the Phillies, all of that. And it was these announcers that you'd hear every night. And it was just this story of baseball. It was different than any other sport. I know every game's on now, but it was precious when I was a kid.
I still think there's something, and maybe it has to be a specific sport, but baseball's that way. I think basketball's that way.
Yeah, it is.
Where the radio call is cool.
Yeah.
And it's different because I don't do that much radio. I do probably 4 or 5 games a year, but it gives you more freedom to take it wherever you want to take it. Mm-hmm. You're not totally bound based on what everybody's watching on TV.
Right.
And that part gets fun. And then, as I got older and we moved back and had kids and they go to bed early, I would sit and just watch the Dodgers so I could hear Scully.
Yeah, a lot of people.
And it was Vin doing just Vin. I mean, there was nobody else in the booth. It was Vin's show. Yep. But you get that late Dodgers game and everybody's in bed.
Yeah.
And you get to hang out with Vin for a few hours every night. And then when we played the Dodgers, that was the one thing I made my parents. I'm like, you need to figure out a way to get a tape, because it was tapes then, of this game.
Right.
Because I want to hear Vin Scully actually say my name. And I didn't make it out of the third inning. I mean, Gary Sheffield almost killed me. And
you got a little bit, though.
It didn't go that well. But I was in long enough for Vin to actually say my name. And for that part, it was that one I won't forget.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Cape Cod League a little bit. Yeah. How did that shape your career?
The cool thing about the Cape, and I think it's this way with a lot of, and it's unique to baseball, and I hope it doesn't go away, is you go to summer ball and you're playing with all the guys you played against. And everybody's in the same place, and you live in with a host family, and you figure out, they hook you up with it. I stocked shelves one year. The other year I worked the kids' camps. And I'm at a place I've never been before. And the first year I wasn't there very long because I pitched a ton my freshman year. The second year I was. But it's guys that I still keep in touch with. Not a ton, but some. They had a big deal because the year that I ended up coming home a couple weeks early, but they won the whole thing. And so they brought a lot of guys out last year to go see it. I don't know. Summer baseball is so unique in sports because of that. I mean, you're in places that nobody's been. You're with guys that, you may have cleared the benches against earlier that year. And the next thing you know, everybody's on the same team and it's a blast and you're hanging out. And you play a few games and you hang out and you go to the beach during the day. Like, life was pretty good to be out in the Cape. And you're playing against, at that time, the best players in the country. So that piece of it was super cool.
Yeah. So when you're in high school and you're going through that whole situation of being a freshman, getting a little bit older, getting a little bit stronger, was there a point where you said to yourself, I'm going to be good enough to play in the pros? Or was there a point where you said, college, when did you realize I'm good enough?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I went to, so I don't know if I've ever told you the story before. If so, just cut me off. But so the old school days, nobody had a cell phone, and they had long distance codes.
Yeah, I remember
at the school.
Yeah.
So I figured out the long distance code, and in my off period, I would go into the training room and I would call all these different schools, just trying to figure out how to recruit myself because there wasn't the showcases, and there was the Olympic festival. That was it. Other than that, there was nothing.
Wow.
And I remember there was outside the teacher's lounge one day, there was this big printout. And at the top of it, it just said in big black writing, who made these calls? And it was to all of the different schools that I had called, trying to get out there and recruit yourself.
Yeah.
But hell, I didn't know. I mean, at that time. And then I got to Stanford, and they said, okay, there's a guy that we trust in Oklahoma City. And if you go, he's got a summer camp. If you go down and throw there, then we trust what his feedback is. And it was a guy named Stan Meek who was a scouting director for a while in the big leagues with a few different teams. And I guess Stan called out there and said, yeah, you should at least take a look. So I went to Stanford's camp. Had never been on campus and got recruited out of that, but I signed for 10%.
Wow.
I mean, Stanford's coach came in. I'll never forget their pitching coach, who ended up basically being like my second dad. And on the recruiting trip, he's like, I don't know if you're ever going to play for us.
Wow.
He goes, I don't know.
Is that honest?
Like, you might, but...
Is it because of you or the talent they got available?
I think it was both. I mean, but I think some of it was he wanted to look into your eye and see the way that you reacted to a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
And it was kind of confusing because you're talking to other coaches and they tell you how great you are. And this guy comes in and he's like,
right.
I don't know. I mean, maybe you are. We're going to give you a shot. If you're good enough, you're going to play. But if you're not good enough, I'm not going to promise you anything.
Right.
I was pissed when he left. I remember I looked at my dad. I'm like, okay, does he want me to go there, or does he not want me to go there? I'm kind of, I don't really know exactly what's going on.
Did you get an academic at all? So I know it's $80,000 now a year. I'm sure it was a lot back then. 10%, that'd be scary.
Yeah, I mean, I was too dumb to realize what was going on, but I mean, my dad and my parents were great. They'd put money aside every year, but I ended up getting 25% my freshman year. So
nice.
Guys signed, 2 guys actually were on campus. And at that point, the rule was once you went to class, you couldn't sign.
Okay.
But if you got on campus, teams would still come after guys that were drafted.
Oh, wow.
So there was 2 guys that were on campus, didn't go to class, ended up signing right before we started practicing.
Moves you up. Yeah.
And then they're like, hey, we got a little bit. And he had told my dad, hey, if some more shows up, we'll do it. And then freshman year went really well, and then they came back and really took care of me after that. But, yeah, it was, I mean, of all the scholarship offers, it was the smallest one out there. But it was it was the place that I wanted to go.
Could you imagine a sport where they don't give you your whole...
Man, I was just fathoming all of that.
Could you imagine that?
Creighton wouldn't have been an option for me.
For a lot of people. Yeah.
I mean, academically, like, I personally, like, I still wasn't I was below average to get into Creighton. I had good grades, but that's the first time I recognized that, like, there's schools that standards are just higher than what I was able to achieve. So if there wasn't an athletic scholarship, bro, I don't know what I'd be honest.
Well, I'll be honest with you,
acceptance
too.
rate at Stanford or something.
Yeah,
like
well,
that.
I wouldn't. I mean, listen, I wasn't getting in unless his right arm was decent. But
mine was a jump shot.
It was, and you take advantage of the things that the good Lord's given you. And at that point, it made it a little bit easier to get in.
Yeah. So for me, I'm kind of segueing to the draft. I think I'll ask the draft question that I want to ask, but who are some of the people in that 97 draft class that are standouts that people could essentially recognize, or people who love baseball will be, like, oh, wow.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So Milwaukee, in their infinite wisdom, took me 2 slots before the Astros took Lance Berkman.
Okay. Dang.
Worked out a little bit different on
Yeah,
both sides.
He was playing college.
Right. We're supposed to be talking to him.
Yeah, exactly. I'll send you Lance's number. You can call him next. J.D. Drew was in that class.
Okay.
Excuse me. Didn't sign. That was actually, his agent was my agent, and he ended up getting a free agent deal, going back into it the next year, and then the Cardinals signed him. I'm trying to think of other guys from that class. Matt Anderson was the first pick. You probably don't remember him. He was a reliever that threw 100.
It's the crazy thing about college baseball and draft, right? I mean, you could have the first 10 picks, and we might not know who they are.
No.
Depends on what year it is sometimes. You know how weird it is. Especially if it was the Cubs drafting back in the day.
Yeah. It was, honestly, a guy I played with in the Cape, a guy named Jason Grilly, that ended up playing probably 12, 13 years in the big leagues.
Okay.
That went earlier in that draft. I can get Randy Wolf played for a long time in the big leagues, left-hander, went to Pepperdine. I'm missing guys, I'm sure. Who are the best ones on there?
Check that out, man.
So Michael
Gloss. Yeah.
Kadyer's in there. There's Lance Berkman, you were saying.
Yeah,
Justin
that was
Worth.
the other thing. The Twins said we're either taking you or Kadire. They were right with Kadire, too.
Yeah, well.
2 for 2 right
But you look
here.
at how many of them did not make All-Star out of that first round.
The vast majority.
Any other
John Garland
sport,
picked for a long time.
Any of the other sports, football, basketball, you're going to hit at a higher rate than this.
Well, the crazy thing is that some of these guys didn't even play in the big leagues.
Yeah.
I mean, you spend that amount of money, and that happens all the time.
Right.
Guys that get drafted, and you don't even, whether it's injury or you're just not good enough.
So my question was, with a moment like that being drafted 13th overall, like, how did that prepare yourself for the transition to play professional baseball? Not only were you drafted 13th. That's different than being drafted. So, like, what was your mindset then, and how did you immediately transition into playing?
Well, I got drafted on the field at Rosenblatt.
Wow.
Because at that point,
used to be,
at that time, the draft was actually during the College World Series. It was in batting practice.
I should bring that back. That's kind of, imagine being in the
NCAA
tournament. You out here running buckets,
they move it to
and
July.
then they pick me first while I'm in the NCAA tournament.
They move it to July. There's a lot of pressure on you guys.
That'd be kind of cool.
We've had these talks before, right? Like, you can't imagine. Can you imagine if they had the NFL draft last night?
No.
Like, they never consider it.
Not
if
ever.
you had
Not
the
think about
NBA
it,
draft during the Final Four,
Right.
they'd never consider it.
Never do it.
Yeah, I
And
guess
at
I'm
that
thinking from a
time-
player perspective.
It's interesting, but the other thing is, and it's no different in the other sport. Maybe it's different in the NFL because it's so slotted. But I mean, in the Major League draft, they're making calls saying, "Okay, we may pop you at 13, but would you take X,
Gotcha.
whatever it is?"
Right.
And they may be making that call to 2 or 3 different guys.
Yeah.
And so imagine doing that.
Man.
Like maybe the most important financial decision you're going to make in your entire life.
Right.
And you're playing an elimination game an hour and a half later.
Man,
We can't get him right now. He's actually in the pin.
I was doing the bucket during batting practice. I was out in center field. And they yelled at me, and I ran off the field, and our SID said, hey,
Peterson.
Milwaukee just took you 13th.
Yeah.
Wow.
I remember the same coach that told me, I don't think you're ever going to play, looked at me. He's like, congratulations. Go back to the bucket.
So he was that
And I had to
guy.
finish the bucket up for
He's
the
the
batting
guy
practice.
that knew your potential but wanted you to stay solid.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I don't. At that time, I think it was hard to understand somebody's potential coming out of this area of the country because
Word.
comparative-wise, you hadn't seen them against everybody else.
For sure.
I mean, you knew the California guys. You knew some of these other guys. They all played against each other.
Right.
We didn't. And then, you figure out in fall, okay, do you belong or don't you belong? And
Right.
it worked out all right.
Kyle Peterson joining us on Let It Fly show. I'm on the committee for the Omar Sports Commission. Every year we talk about, you getting into the Hall of Fame because obviously you're worthy. That's a decision. It's been tough because I know you're working during that time a lot of times. But what are your thoughts on getting into the Hall of Fame?
Well, let me say this first. Going 13th, he better be in the Hall of Fame or I'm going to cause an uproar.
For his whole career, too, everything.
Well, you go look at my career stats, and you may think a little bit
No,
differently.
but you said it, though. When back then, they're not coming out of the Midwest, especially Nebraska, like that.
Yeah.
That's an achievement
special.
within itself.
Yeah, it was different.
That's all
Yeah.
I'm trying to say, man. So my bad.
It was different.
Yeah, my bad.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's super cool. I mean, I didn't vote, but I'm the board chair of the sports commission, and I've been for the last 2.5 years, and so the sports commission itself is extremely important to me, and I think since the swim trials left, and trying to make sure that the sports commission stays active, and we're bringing other things to town, and so the fact that it's a component of that is big. Yeah. And then, I mean, this place is home. It's super special to me. So anything that is associated with the city and kind of pat you on the back for some of the things you've done in the past, it's super cool. It's during the SEC tournament. I told Lindsay that when it was going on. I'm like, all right, this one I can't get out of.
I know. And we've waited. We talked about it. I've been on it for 4 years now, and every year we talk about it. We're like, well, Kyle's not going to be here, but eventually you got to put the best in. So you're one of the best. So you got to go in.
There you go, bro.
I'm not sending my kid to give the speech. I can tell you that.
No, you got to do it
something
yourself.
ahead of time because Lord only knows what he'd say. So.
Hey, so tell me this. Major League debut, 1999.
What do you remember?
There you go.
What do I remember? I remember it was the White Sox, and they were nice enough to not play Frank Thomas that day.
Wow. Okay.
That was the first thing I looked at.
I
when
wonder
I got
why.
to the
Why
ballpark.
wouldn't they play him?
For kids who are watching this, Milwaukee was in the American League.
Yeah, when I got called up.
Yeah.
And then we switched right after that.
Right.
So they didn't play Frank Thomas. Chris Singleton, who I ended up working with some at ESPN, that was the first hit I gave up. Ray Durham led off, hit an absolute missile to center field. Marquise Grissom made a hell of a catch.
Nice.
Then Singleton singled. Then Maglio Ordonez hit it in like the 48th row at County Stadium.
Man.
And I'm like, ooh, okay.
He hit a lot of them.
A little bit different deal.
Just the big leagues, yeah.
It's just, I'm 3 guys in. I'm down 2 rip. I'm looking around going, I don't know. And I don't know. I went 5 and change maybe that day and didn't get I think we were ahead, and then we gave it up, or I don't know what happened. But,
Quality start.
Yeah, quality enough.
Yep.
Yeah, and then and I didn't get many of them, so I remember them, but my first win was actually against the Expos.
Okay.
Who don't even exist anymore.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And that was, I don't know, maybe
I had an
2
Expo
weeks
jersey
later.
when I was a kid from the Goodwill.
Oh, yeah, I had the hat and because I never figured out it was actually an M.
good
but,
colors,
Good colors, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a little bit different. And it was a crazy time. I mean, that was, Bonds and Sosa and McGuire when everything was going crazy.
That's when I fell in love with baseball, is when you debuted in 99.
That's when I fell out of love with it because I had to face him.
I mean, I was at school and I was confused, like, how is baseball so popular? But then I started seeing the home runs and the things. And yeah, we all understand the controversy behind it. But as a fan, I love that time.
You know what, though, man? Like, everybody knew what was going on.
For sure.
Sure.
When you walked into a clubhouse, it was interesting to walk into spring training at that time because you kind of look around the clubhouse and you're like, yep.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Right.
I remember Lenny Dykstra going from This little skinny dude playing for the Mets all of a sudden being nails. You're like, that's not natural.
No.
Right.
But they didn't test.
Right.
And we all subscribe to it. Like as a players association, if we wanted to, you could have fought it and said everybody test. And so, I don't know. The two things that bug me are, I just saw the Hall of Fame. They just announced it. I saw Ichiro got in and Sabathia and Billy Wagner.
God, Billy could throw fast.
Oh, I remember.
He threw so hard.
I got beat 1-0 at the Superdome. Not the Superdome.
The Astrodome.
The Astrodome.
Yeah.
It was Jose Lima.
Oh, okay.
Who went the first 7 or 8, and Billy Wagner came in at the ninth, threw 9 pitches, 9 strikes,
all at 100.
Nothing below 99.
Yeah, that's legendary, bro.
I remember sitting there going, oh.
He wasn't a big dude either.
That's legendary.
He wasn't that big.
A big dude at all.
But the fact that, like, I mean, McGuire and A-Rod and Bonds, like, these are the best players ever.
Yeah.
Clemens. Yeah. Everybody doing it is the wrong way to say it. There were plenty of other people that were doing it.
Yeah.
That have since gone in. And this holier than thou thought about, well, we're keeping him out, we're keeping him out. But I don't know.
That's what I just said to you a little while ago. You're the best of the best. You got to be in it. Because you can't tell the story of baseball without those guys.
Yeah. I can tell you this, man.
You
can't do it. Can't tell the story without
them. If you stood 60 feet away and Bonds got into the box, and McGuire got in the box, and Sosa got in the box, and you're going to tell me that those aren't some of the best players that ever played the game,
right.
You're out of your mind.
Man. Did you ever face Albert Bell?
No. Pujols, yeah.
Joey was – I covered Joey in college.
Yeah.
And Joey was the scariest person to talk to. Like, from here to here, you felt, like, energy coming off of him. He was so angry. And when the way he did that thing with the bat, he was terrified. It would be hard to get up there and 60 feet away from that guy.
Bertman had amazing stories about
he was
then Joey Bell.
Especially when they went to go visit like Ole Miss or Mississippi State.
Yeah, I know.
Oh,
yeah,
it's not good.
Dang, man,
not good, man.
The way that you can articulate talking about baseball is really interesting. You should write a book or do an audio or something, man.
I don't have the patience to write a book.
Ghostwriter? You get a ghostwriter?
I need a few.
Let me ask a couple of College World Series questions before we let you go. So ACC, SEC Invitational last year. Is that what you think we're going to see from now on? Because one of the big things about the College World Series is we love variety as people from Omaha. How much variety are we going to be seeing?
Right.
I don't think that will be the norm. I think that's going to be abnormal to see two conferences. You're going to see 2 to 4 or 5 from one of those conferences every year. I think to exclude everybody else, there's too much randomness. I mean, I was just looking today because I wasn't sure exactly what we were going to go into, so I wanted to understand who was in it last year. Oregon was in a super. UConn was in a super. I mean, so you're close enough to where if you get on a heater for 2 days, you're going to go. Right. And I still think you're going to see plenty of that. But between those two, and the Big Ten got better, man.
Yes.
I mean, I know that SC hadn't been very good in a while, and UCLA hadn't been great in the last 5 years, but Oregon has been knocking on the door. Washington was here 5-6 years ago. Yeah. That's the one league. I mean, the SEC got better because it's OU in Texas, and the ACC, I think, got better because of who they added. Stanford helps them. But the Big Ten got better in baseball by adding those. I think it helps Nebraska, who, I mean, I saw the rankings came out yesterday. Nebraska's 24th. He's got a chance. They're old. He gets a lot. They lost Sears, which is big. And they lost Karen, their catcher, who's a really good player. But the rest of their lineup's back. I mean, he's got a chance.
Speaking about getting better, I know in baseball there's no salary cap. How does that correlate to college when it comes to NIL and things like that? Like, we can just fix that right now by just giving somebody $1 million at pitcher, and one of my problems go away? Or what's NIL like when it comes to baseball?
It's very spread out. I mean, it definitely exists, and there's some that exist significantly. I mean, it's kind of the programs you would think. There's also some programs that I think you would think, and I'm not totally speaking out of school here, but Stanford's NIL budget is extremely small. And I mean, Stanford lost a kid to A&M 2 years ago who ended up being a first rounder last year, Braden Montgomery.
Right.
So it's there, but it's not to the the dollar level that it is, which you wouldn't think it is for basketball and football. Yeah. But I think some of these bigger programs, it's an NIL budget that's well into the 7 figures.
It may balance out because you have those states. The southern states, a lot of them have lottery scholarships. So if you're from Georgia, you're from Tennessee, you're from Louisiana, you can go to school for free. As long as you get like a 2.0, that's it. So it kind of balances it out a little bit, some of those schools that don't have that advantage.
Yeah, I think for cost of attendance.
Right.
And then
Sure.
it's, okay, who's getting above and beyond and what exactly does it look like? And so, I mean, baseball's still, at least today, I know that theoretically changes next year, but it's 11.7 scholarships.
Right.
So initially when NIL happened in baseball, a lot of it was, okay, we can get you to full.
Right.
And get you to zero cost of attendance.
Right.
And now with everything else, I mean, it's blown up more than it had before. And, I mean, you got guys making real money.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. Last
there's
thing I want to
not.
ask you about, you've been through these intense moments on the mound and doing other things. Is there anything more intense than watching your kids out there in a
man.
big golf
As a dad,
tournament
no.
or playing whatever sport? Is that the most intense you feel when you're out there?
Yeah, it was. So my son is a sophomore now at Wesleyan playing golf, and I caddied for him some when he was growing up. Mm-hmm. Until we had a mutual parting of the ways one year in the middle of the summer, to where I kind of looked at him after a round and I said, you know what? I'm just going to be dad tomorrow, and you're going to carry your bag, and I'm going to have a few beers, and I'm going to follow.
Yeah.
And that was the last day.
Really?
My daughter still hadn't totally kicked me off the bag yet in the summer, but yeah, it's amazing how much better you get at sports when you watch your kid and you're like, why can't you make a 4-foot putt?
Right.
And then you go play and you miss 5 4-foot putts in the round and you realize, well, that actually is hard. But
For sure.
It is, you're right. It's nerve-wracking to watch them compete. There is nothing more rewarding in my life than to watch my kids compete. There just isn't. And it doesn't mean that they're going to win.
No.
I love watching them win. My daughter's golf team won state last year, and that was really cool. Mm-hmm. I didn't see his. They won it, but I was at the SEC tournament, which I'll kick myself forever for missing it. But just watching them compete and learn and not succeed and figure out what you do after you don't succeed. And golf is such an individual sport. My middle one plays soccer, but for the other one, like, it's you, man.
Right.
That's it.
That's crazy.
I mean, it's like being on the free throw line. At
know.
that point, you can't blame anybody else.
Exactly.
That's it, and off you go. But it's awesome. I enjoy it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Kyle, we appreciate it. Thanks for
man.
taking the time.
Thanks
Good
for
talking
asking
to you, man.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you. Appreciate
Good
it.
seeing you again.
Yeah.
Josh, good seeing you, buddy.
Yes, sir.